Thank you.
Excellent.
I'll dive right into it, and I will talk quite fast because there's a lot to cover. I'm very grateful to Wildja for this opportunity. It means a great deal to me in my work, as you will start to discover. I am the founder of the Empathy Project. I describe it as a cultural project addressing the urgent need to reframe human relationships, specifically with animals, towards ways that benefit all of us. And the project was really developed in response to the depth and scale of animal suffering on the planet today. It is extraordinarily widespread and it's very deep. And I think it's something that we don't really talk about or think about enough. It was also developed in response to the belief that where animals suffer and are exploited, inevitably humans suffer and are exploited too. So in my work, I bring animals to the foreground, both in terms of what they endure and who they are. And this approach, which I call it a form of radical truth telling, aims to cultivate compassion and ignite deep rooted change. I think this is particularly necessary because we are moving into dangerous times, a climate and ecological breakdown. And I think that new and more compassionate ways of being in this world will be more necessary than ever. The Empathy Project believes that if we place the lives of others, those that we have othered, they haven't always been others, alongside ourselves, we will set in place the restorative cultures that support us, the natural world, her animals, and our children in difficult futures. And I want to quote Jane Goodall, much missed. She said this: "Only if we understand will we care. Only if we care will we help. Only if we help shall all be saved." And in my talk, I linger a little bit on this idea of understanding. How can we truly understand without knocking through some cultural barriers that we've put around ourselves? I do operate from an animal rights lens. That does not mean that I expect anyone on this call to be animal rights. I do get the sense, though, that everyone cares deeply about nature and the planet. Can we have the next slide? Thanks, Michelle. This is pretty much exactly what I would have done if I'd been in your position. Thank you so much. So this is the Empathy Project, and this is why I think empathy is a critical yet overlooked tool in climate, nature, and communication. And also why I think empathy, specifically empathy for animals, is the potential for real action. It's really because so many of us say that we love animals, but that most of the animals alive on the planet today exist in what I have now started to understand are really horrific circumstances. My background is not animal rights, it's a whole pot of things. I used to be a fashion editor, and then I got into climate activism. I am an animal rights speaker in schools. I became a child counsellor. I am a community organizer. I facilitate workshops in biodiversity, and I am now, in my sort of truest nature, an advocate for other species. Each sector has brought me knowledge of how the world seems to work. For instance, my participation in fashion has shown me that it's truly quite an aggressive industry, very, very adept at creating desire for objects that we really don't need anymore. And also given me an idea of sort of the economic systems we work within and their priorities. But every one of the sectors has left me with this one question: how do we communicate to create change? Because change is frustratingly slow. Every sector that I have participated in, it is inching. And I desperately want to accelerate it because, like you, like everyone else on this call, this is really urgent. We are on course for 5 to 10 degrees of warming. Even more catastrophically, nature is in dreadful danger. And something I used to say a bit more in my climate centre that I used to run is, even if we addressed the climate issue and pulled every gram of carbon out of the atmosphere, we would still be facing a nature crisis, which would make it very, very difficult for us to exist on this planet. And really recent research, according to the Planetary Health Check, which was just came out in the last couple of weeks, we have crossed the 7th of the 9 planetary boundaries created by the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. So we've crossed 7 out of 9 boundaries, and each of those boundaries is crucial to the survival of humans on this planet. We also know, and it's just not discussed enough, that animal agriculture significantly impacts those planetary boundaries. Can we go to the next slide, please, Michelle? So these are the planetary boundaries. Animal agriculture contributes to exceeding limits for climate change, biodiversity loss, land system change. Just think about the vast amount of land we need for animal agriculture and biogeochemical flows as well. We have lost 83% of the world's wildlife. Our oceans are overfished. Our soils are exhausted, all within the context of a violently warming planet. Just 2% of mammals alive today are wild. 60% are farmed. This is the kind of statistic. Oh, can we go to the next slide, please, actually, Michelle? I really want to linger on that 2% of mammals, the mammalian biomass, if you like, are wild animals. 60% are farmed. 90% of that 60% are in factory farmed conditions. We kill 100 to 200 billion animals a year for food. If you kind of play with those statistics, it means that a third of all mammalian life on this planet is suffering, and it's suffering really badly. And I think that's really, it is for me, enough to question the system, the food system. It often means that I frame the animal rights issue as a social justice issue. How can we call ourselves loving, humane, empathetic beings if fully a third of mammals alive today and countless trillions of birds and fishes are suffering badly? So I want to take you to 2 instances that I think, so I could trot out data all day. I would say this, it hasn't worked. I used to run a climate center. It didn't seem to, people were concerned, but not concerned as much as they needed to be. One thing I will add also about the 2% of mammalian biomass that is wild, they stand on the very front lines of the climate emergency. I remember someone said to me, who's going to bring water to the elephants when it's 50 degrees? They are, how do they evolve and adapt quickly enough for what is coming? And does that mean then we are looking at a world without wildlife? And what I will say is when I use the aggregate term wildlife, I want to just remind us here that these are individuals as well. These are families and communities struggling. And it's not just, I don't know, it makes me very emotional if I think about it. But I wanted to also talk about 2 things that particularly took me to this place where I think that empathy is required, and an empathy couched in knowledge. The first was, as a school speaker, I went into school after school using the materials provided to me by an amazing charity called Animal Aid. And I would face children who were not being moved in a way I thought they would be moved. Michelle, can we go to the next slide? And the materials that I would be given is a lot like what you see here, which is mother pigs in cages where they're kept in order to be impregnated, their pregnancy, and the early stages of nursing. And I would show the children this. This is what was in the material that was given to me, and they weren't responding as I thought they might respond. And I realized it's because they had no experience of pigs. That in fact, the closest they'd ever been to a pig was probably the ham in their ham sandwich. And how could I engage them to care about an animal that they'd had no experience of in any real form? Perhaps as a cartoon character, but that's a million miles away. And so going back to that quote from Jane Goodall about understanding, there's a lot of understanding that was missing in that talk. The second instance where I thought we need to engage empathetically with what's going on in the world today, Michelle, next slide, is when I was in a people's assembly and I turned around to a man sitting next to me. We were very engaged, very lovely people talking about the climate and nature crisis. And I said to him, we really need to work. This was a time when there was severe drought in the Horn of Africa. And I said, at that time, it's 50,000 people have died of the effects of prolonged drought. Half of them are children. And he turned around to me and he just said, "I don't even know what to do with that figure. I have no. It's a figure." And I thought back to this image that I saw of someone who would to a father and a son enduring drought conditions. And I thought how powerfully this image had moved me because it was a father reassuring his son. It was a boy looking up at his dad in this terrible, terrible time, reminding us of the connections, the families, the individuals who are caught up in, when I say to you a drought in Sudan, it feels so abstract. But these are real people being caught up in these emergencies. So I started to think, why is it that I care, that I'm so distressed, that I want to work, and that the distress works makes me want to work hard to alert people to the climate and nature crisis, to the animal emergency, and to social justice issues, when I know that I'm surrounded by good people who are not quite often getting it. Can you go to the next slide, please? So here's this where I developed what I call the 3 pillars of the empathy project. And the 3 pillars are these. You can't see them probably too clearly, but they are broadly love, grief, and reconciliation. The love is the idea that we all deeply love. We love other species, we love other people, we love the natural world. And I try and celebrate the wonder of animals in my work, but also the deep love, obviously, that we have for them. I talk about their individuality, but I engage in radical truth-telling, that they are these incredible creatures, but they are suffering badly, which brings me to pillar 2, which is the difficult pillar, grief. How do we encompass everything that we have done? How do we encompass, and I say done really quite deliberately, humans have caused a lot of what we're going through today. How do I talk about the grief, the rage often, the suffering, and how do I make it clear that this is the nexus? Pillar 2 is really the turning point. If you do not grieve, you have not fully understood what is happening. But how do we create spaces where people can grieve communally, in community, and yet then move out the other side to go into pillar 3, which is about reconciliation. And in reconciliation, in pillar 3, I talk a lot about world building as well, because I think a lot of climate and nature activism is so depressing, and animal activism so depressing. Let us instead also talk about the possibilities of what happens if you or I or me or everyone on this call stepped out of the door now knowing that no one was being exploited for our well-being. No one, whether they're human or more than human. And, I've had the opportunity of being in some spaces where that was suggested, and the burden lifted was quite extraordinary. It's a feeling of release and reprieve and joy that we are in solidarity with our kin, whether that kin is human or more than human. Can we have the next slide, please? So the pillars don't exist separately. They often do exist together. So, for example, on the left, you see my article on the mothers of dairy, where I talk about the way mother cows are exploited over and over again. And I bring in, yes, the grief, because they're enduring terrible conditions on the farm that was featured in an undercover investigation. And I talk about who they are, who they could be. Cows, exceptional mothers, they purr, they can form incredible relationships with humans if that's what they want to do. I don't talk so much about the visioning. And also for pillar, if I could go to the next slide, for pillar 2, the grief piece, I have just created a short 30-minute film where I interview activists about that moment where they're just going through the world going, yeah, it's fine. And then there's something they see, something they hear, something that creates a break for them with what has gone before. and they suddenly want to engage in this film in animal activism. But actually, I think the message of that awakening, if you want, could be applied to so many other areas in activism. Each of the speakers, chef, gardener, you can see the gardener, the chef, and I think the woman on the right is a phenomenal strategist. Each of them encounters a moment where they go, something is wrong with the world. It's not as I thought it was. I need to work to change it. This is what I want to do. And I've definitely had that. That is why I'm here today. Next slide, please. Please. And in the reconciliation pillar, I've commissioned a workshop called Town Anywhere, um, Visioning a World of Multi-Species Flourishing, where all the participants for a day will imagine a world of multi-species justice, will ask themselves what it looks like, will build it, will think about their role in it. We will all have jobs in the world of multi-species justice. So this is how the three pillars of the Empathy Project exhibits themselves. It's a theory of change, if you like. I would like, for example, to create a workshop in which we go in, we celebrate our love for animals. We then, in the middle section, encounter what's happening to them and what they endure, who they are and what they endure. We grieve, and then we come through, and then we say, this is not what we want. What we want is this world, a world of flourishing, where we are in alignment with other species on this planet, where we challenge systems that exploit them. Could I have the next slide, please? So when I know that Wildyer has this amazing audience of ecopreneurs, people already working in this space, and I really wanted to sort of try and think very practically about how to communicate some of the issues that I've talked about. So, how to tell stories that include animals as individuals? There is extraordinary work being done in this space already. Now, on the left, with the jaguar, I think, behind the glass cage, it's actually a website called We Animals. It was developed by a documentary photographer called Joanne MacArthur. And she now has a bank of phenomenal photographers who go around the world documenting animals in lots of different spaces. She offers all of those images for free, but one thing particularly stands out about her approach. She rarely takes pictures of groups of animals. She focuses on the individual animal, therefore creating this direct relationship between you and the animal in the image, sort of trying to encourage that. And she really is a pioneer in this way of thinking, and I've now seen it start to exhibit itself in other ways. Can I have the next slide, please? There is what I call it new writing about animals, and I was going to read this out to you. It's very small on my screen, so I can't see it. But there is a whole tranche of Instagram posts now. This is called I think squirrel boxes, and this man has set up this tiny camera in this particular squirrel box, and there's a squirrel in there called Emma, and she does particular little things, squirrely things every day, but he writes about it, or she writes about it, I honestly don't know, in a way where she goes, here's Emma. She's decided to take her nap early today. It's at 8 a.m. She's been very busy. So her nap today is a lot earlier. And he'll just talk about her like she's a little person. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is another, I think it's obviously something quite big on social media. This is another Instagram account called Give Me Your Voice. And he also talks about this animal here, this dog being, she's got such gentle eyes if you see the video, and she's living in a rubbish dump in South America. And the rescuers come in, and she's just so sweet and grateful. And he writes about the fact that this is just another life out on the boundaries, living where she should not have been living. She should be loved in a home, or perhaps roaming the streets in a safe environment. And it's just the way he writes. It's kind of like poetry to me. And it's so moving. I feel as if I've seen so much suffering, and yet I've seen no one has written about it in this way. Could we go to the next slide, please? Really wish I could read these out to you. They're very, very beautiful. And Give Me Your Voice also did this incredible post where he writes about how shelter dogs in America, they come in and their tails are wagging. But as time goes on and they're not adopted, those tails stop wagging, and they get more still, and they start to understand that perhaps they're in this space for a very long time, and that for many of them, actually, they never leave that space, except, as you see, in these black bags. And I find this a really moving shot because one of the dogs has not had her head covered. And so you're reminded that these aren't, again, you're reminded that these are not aggregates, these are not numbers. But each of them had hopes and dreams. And I am going to say, someone will, perhaps not in this group, say to me, Belle, you're just being sentimental. And I will say, we've had enough dispassion. We've had enough aggregates. We've had enough of individual beings numbered. Each has their story. I actually asked an academic, do we need to be worried about anthropomorphism? And he said, no. What we need to be worried about is anthropodenialism, where we deny any kinship with the animals, because that is the thing that allows us to exploit them on the scale with which they are being exploited today. Can we have the next step? I'm so sorry to all if this is difficult material, but I find that we have to talk about animal suffering because it is the defining aspect of our current relationship on a mass scale with animals. There's so much love, which I'd also like to talk about as well. But I think there's a lot of harm going on. And so I'm sorry if this is triggering for anyone, but let's linger with it. I won't let you suffer too much. So when one of the questions that Oliver really wanted me to talk about is how can we talk about animal suffering without shutting people down? Like anyone engaged in this process, I have had this moment where I've turned around to a friend and gone, oh my God, I've seen this and it's really, really not great. And they've said, don't tell me about it. I do not want to know. So I am not about to fill everyone's screen with graphic materials. But somehow we do need to find ways to talk about what is going on. Otherwise, we don't have a full picture. We're not operating with a 360 degree of what's going on. So I will talk about this image very, very quickly because I can tell I'm running out of time. I always do. This is a picture of a piglet on a farm in sub-Saharan Africa by Joanne MacArthur, the woman I talked about before, the photographer I talked about before. And she wrote a really moving caption. She said, my mind returns to this photograph, this piglet. I watched her for a few moments as she lay here looking at the outdoors through the drainage hole, and then lay her head down on the dirty concrete as you see her here. And there's so much about this piglet's experience that she is so close to a natural world that she could enjoy and maybe raise a family in, but she'll never get there. And so I give you this example as a way of creating that empathetic connection with other species that tells the truth about who they are, both what they endure and also her intelligence. I think there's something very soulful about an animal who can look out and see a particular scene, gaze, and then maybe just put their heads down and be very patient about never being able to be in that world. It's like Alice through the looking glass, that image. And we're going to actually skip the next image, if that's okay. And actually, I think I've given you enough hard material. Uh, is everyone okay with everything that I've said? So, okay, so here's another. I am so sorry. This will be the last miserable thing I talk about. I saw it was a duck, and the duck was not very frightened in a slaughterhouse. So she tried to escape, and she jumped into a puddle of water because that was her nature. It was a very small puddle on a slaughterhouse floor, and she just thought, "Get to the water, get to the water." But of course, the water was very dirty, and it was full of blood from other ducks who had been killed, and it was a scene again that really, really moved me. That she tried to follow her instincts to get to a place of safety, and I thought, how can I tell this story so that it sort of awakes people to what they endure. And I thought, well, maybe I just show a picture of a duck and then talk about what this abstract image of a duck, and talk about what that particular duck endured, and could that shift people on how they see these animals and what they go through. And that's enough from me with the slightly miserable stuff. I'm really sorry about this. Thank you for being with me on this. So there are great campaigns. Um, And I would like to highlight this one in particular because Oliver wanted me to talk about real world examples of campaigns that stirred hearts and minds. Um, and also how to move from cold facts to warm truth-based storytelling. And I've put those two subject headings into one because I think this campaign actually does move from cold facts to warm truth-based storytelling. This group called Animal Rising, they did an undercover investigation of factory farms under the RSPCA Assured scheme, and they did get really, difficult footage. But what they did do is they rescued one pig and they focused on Charlie's story. And Charlie, they showed films of Charlie sort of being free and happy and healthy. And another thing that I really loved about this campaign, and maybe you wanted to consider it for your campaigns, it had a very multidimensional approach. So they had a letter signed by celebrities. They managed to get the chairperson of the RSPCA to resign, which was Chris Packham at the time. And they told Charlie's story, so they did open rescue as well. And I think it's a great model. There are aspects I would have added, but I won't linger on that given the time. Can we skip the next slide, please? And go to practical ways to center compassion in your NGO and your brand and your advocacy work. And here we're getting into quite an exciting area. I would say that if you are working in this area, one of the most exciting things that you could do is an interspecies council. Now, an interspecies council is a methodology introduced by an organization called Moral Imagination. And they basically take an idea of Joanna Macy, also much missed, which is the Council of All Beings, and they create more of a people's assembly format. So this is actually a picture that is a council that I was part of. And we were invited to debate the DEFRA's new land use proposals, but from the perspective of other species. So we were each invited to choose a species, and I was dairy cow because I feel very close to dairy cows, and I feel very sort of committed to telling their story. But we had in the interspecies councils hedgerow, river, hedgehog, fox. And we did a little bit of research before we joined the council, but we were invited to speak to this issue from the perspective of hedgerow, fox, dairy cow. And there are groups who do it in a very sort of with masks and song. I don't think that's always necessary unless you're really particularly wedded to that form of creative expression. It is very beautiful when it takes place. But I think this is where we were just talking as ordinary people, going, these are what I need to thrive, and in these circumstances, I think it was a really, really great day. Can we have the next slide, please? Another thing that we're starting to see more of is nature on the board. So how do we get a seat for nature actually on the board? It's led by an initiative called Lawyers for Nature. I'm not sure, and I should have known. I love this image because it's just like this kind of utopian world, but it's a sort of form of the representation of the interspecies councils where you have one chair or one person speaking for nature. I think it will be a great challenge in an organization, say, like Coca-Cola. But the companies that have brought on board is something like Faith and Nature. So they do very ecologically based shampoo and body formulas, and they're trialing this system. Can we have the next slide? Another organization that I'd like to introduce you to is Animal Think Tank, which have done a lot of work on different narrative strategies. And I only have 2 slides they have a various number of reports, which are all pretty well researched. And they hear, for example, perspective narratives for animal freedom, focus on the animal's abilities. I actually can't see it. I'm so sorry. I will try and bring it up actually. I can see it. Animal abilities focus on things like values and morality. No one wants other animals on this planet to suffer. And this idea of bigger us, that we are part of a living world. If we go on to the next slide, we start to see that they've actually crafted how an effective message might be. Why should we care? Well, what is at stake? How do we solve this? And I think this is an amazing place for a advocacy group to go. How do we solve this? We can help you solve this. This is almost like this is where you would say, this is where you would come in with your solution. And then how will we benefit? And then, of course, that call to action, what would we do now? Can we go on to the next slide? And there is this remarkable initiative called Nature Connectedness, which is now a collaboration between the University of Derby and Natural England, where they worked out that they have wonderful stats, but people are three and a half times more likely to work to support nature if they feel connected to nature. So they have a workshop that is designed to help people connect more to nature, and it's really special because you don't even have to go outside to do it. And we're surrounded by nature. Everything, the paper in my book, it was originally from a natural place. If we could go to the next slide. And I did the course, and they say one of the ways that we can engage with nature is through looking at perhaps a tree and thinking about the tree in terms of meaning, in terms of beauty, in terms of emotion, what emotion those trees engender in us. Compassion is obviously a very big one, and our senses, how a tree feels. And so, for instance, I could go down to my bathroom where my plants seem to thrive best, take a leaf and connect with that, just that leaf, with meaning, with beauty, with those lenses of beauty and meaning, emotion, compassion, and senses. And I would say that in your advocacy groups, this is a wonderful. They do a free online course that you can sign up to. It'll be back online in 2026. I think they're actually reformulating it once right now. But it's something that you must recommend both to your teams, but also to anyone who sort of interacts with you. But this isn't. If we could go to the next slide, please. What I would say, and I'm into the last bit now, is that this isn't just about adopting things that you think will work. It is about truly inhabiting a mindset shift. And I've become very interested in the idea of SIVA. So you see here that currently that on the left-hand side of the triangle, our systems seem to work according to ego. And I always find it slightly hilarious, but the man is on top, he's in dominance. He's in dominance even of the woman who is it. So we're in this society, this belief system where we can exploit anyone who we think is weaker than us. Man, woman, whale, the poorer, the child. We need to shift to eco. And I love this idea of eco where people are alongside the other species on the planet. This is truly the mindset shift we have to occupy to mitigate the climate crisis, to create a resilience with the natural world. We just genuinely have to reframe our relationship with nature. But increasingly, I'm becoming absorbed with this idea of SIVA, where we are in service to the natural world. And I really think after everything that we've done to it, perhaps we need to think about ourselves more as earth stewards. Um, we are here to take care of everyone, whether that's human or more than human. And then my last thought is this: so much of my talk has been about sadness, about empathizing with creatures who are suffering, but it's not just about empathy with animals who are having a difficult time. If we could go to the last slide. There's a lot of joy available here. There's a lot of positive storytelling, if you like. Imagine what it would be to empathize, truly be in empathy, in congruence, in kinship, in allyship with this whale. And I think that's why I'm so pleased to be here today. That's why I'm so thrilled with the work of Wildja. That's why I'm so thrilled with the work of everyone on this call. I think the potential, once we get through pillar 2, grief, the joy in reconciliation is enormous. And that's it at 10 to 7 in UK time. Thanks so much.
That was really beautiful, Belle. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to take a quick look at the Q&A. Sorry, I couldn't see the screen while I was sharing, so I'm just catching
Yeah,
up.
no, don't worry.
Awesome. Okay, we already have some questions, so let me go ahead and spotlight those. So this one's from Rachel.
Yeah.
Rachel, did you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to ask Belle, how do you define nature?
Oh gosh, do you know what? Yes, I actually like the phrasing of your question at this time. I mean, it's all the living world, isn't it? Really, and I'm very wary of um, mm, groups that don't see it in a whole. So, for example, I'm part of a lot of climate and nature groups from my previous work, and for example, the climate groups sometimes just don't want to, and they don't want to be bothered with what the animals are going through. They're very focused on reducing carbon. It's important, I understand, but if you just focus on carbon, you don't take into account all the other parts of nature. This is a theme of the whole talk, really. And in your question, do you agree that nature is something invisible as well as visible? Yes. Yes, of course. Yes.
So my question comes from consciousness.
Yes.
How do we measure consciousness? Or
Yes.
there's so many different types of consciousness.
Yes.
and,
Yes. Oh, thank you. Yes.
and we think,
Yes.
we're stuck in our kind of human
Yes.
limited brain.
Yes.
And it takes practice, a lot of practice to.
Yes. So one of the things and this is brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel. There's a lot of work, for example, at the moment in AI. It's like, oh, we'll use AI to interpret animals. And it just makes, I'm sorry to anyone who is part of that AI at the moment, it makes my heart sink. Because I think what we do with that is we ignore the possibility of just listening or just being with or just saying, I don't completely understand and it's okay because at least I'm trying. And it sort of gets away with this human need to interpret everything, categorize everything, get results. Why is it not okay to just sit alongside?
Mm-hmm.
And how much we can learn without AI and computer
Mm-hmm.
programs. And in fact, for me, it seems like the exact counterpoint to the very aggressive commercial, capitalist, exploitative, degrading culture is to just be in harmony with and not have all the answers right now and not get anything concrete like no product at the end of it. That it's a meditative state that we need to occupy more often.
Well, thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, Zoe, you're up. Is that not showing up?
Should I ask my question
Yes,
directly?
sorry. I'm trying to stop the. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Very bad
it's
facilitator. Sorry, everyone.
yeah, it's a bit long. But there is really a book that stayed with me since I read it during my literature studies. It's called Anima. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if anyone heard of it, but it's a very powerful story because it's told through the point of view of animals. And it was so powerful because it really helped me to reconnect with nature, with the wild in me and wildlife in general. And that was what was the story was all about, the main character reconnecting with nature and wildlife. And so I was wondering, what you think, Belle, about telling stories from the perspective or the point of view of animals to try to reconnect people with animals and try to care a bit more, be a bit more empathetic towards them.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think that's when I was talking about some of the social media posts that were coming through at the moment from that account, Give Me Your Voice, but also squirrel boxes. They were speaking from the perspective of the animal, and it's quite interesting. When I've been working on this workshop where we imagine new futures, and the facilitator said, "How do we get people to imagine what it might be like to be an, because we want some more than humans there. And I was thinking, maybe we just, again, it's a sort of guided meditation where you go, imagine what it's like to be a whale, imagine how cold it must be, or imagine what it must be like to read the currents and hear other species all around you. And God, it must be a magical. Sorry, it just reminds me of my point I wanted to make about reframing the animal as teacher. I think it's really, really, really important. There is loads of potential errors. Okay, we do not understand what the animals are thinking. We can't really. But again, I'm going to go back to my point. At least we're trying. And it may be that if we do this for long enough as a species, in 100, 150 years' time, we might be able to understand what the animals are trying to tell us. I would also like to just linger on this point where I think we do desperately need to reframe them as teachers, companions, kin. There's one sanctuary in Spain, I can't remember its name, but they refer to all their animals as master cow, master sheep, and it just tilts the relationship a bit. Suddenly, you are on a much more equal footing, and you have things to learn. So many times, actually, in my feeds, I see people going, "I've learned so much from spending time. I've learned about patience or acceptance of other species, or I've learned." I mean, it's just a very moving way, and I think we can get close to that through storytelling. Yes, from the animal's perspective. Yeah.
If that's okay, I'll just ask another question. I didn't send it in the chat. I didn't know if we would have time. But regarding this point, I'm always a bit afraid when I want to take the point of view of an animal when I'm writing. I'm always afraid to be too anthropocentric,
Yeah.
to be too much human, to humanize too many times the animals.
Yeah.
And what we want here at Waldia, I'm pretty sure, is just to have more wildlife and not having more pets. So how can I avoid being anthropocentric when I'm having the point of view of an animal?
Yeah. I'm just going to go back to what I said before, actually. I think, yes, there is a danger in anthropocentrism. I think the intention behind it is wonderful. We're going to make mistakes because no one is directly communicating with animals. But I don't know about you, my companion animals, I kind of get what they're trying to say to me most of the time. I would say experiment and go with the flow and acknowledge that you're not going to know exactly what they're thinking. But the intent is so beautiful that I think it can't be ignored.
Okay, thank you so much.
So just building on that point, I'm sure all of you have seen the film My Octopus Teacher on the topic of animals teaching us stuff. Craig Foster wrote a book I think it was released earlier this year, called Amphibious Soul, and he does a very good job of not anthropocizing animals too much, and he gives them a real, about authentic voice, but definitely a voice which you can relate to, but it's not necessarily human. And so, yeah, that kind of it creates a very, very strong bond. And he tells amazing stories of the sand people and how they're super related to their natural environment. So that's a really good example of how to do it.
Thank you. I will look that up, and the film was gorgeous as well.
Irina, did you want to add anything? I know you have a comment, Irina. I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah. It's just my connection is really unstable. I didn't want to be pieces of my conversation like interrupted by some awkward scenes like this. So yeah, hence the writing.
Can I just say, I'm reading your question. I don't have the answer to that. I think it's an ongoing exploration. Agree with her. I feel like when telling stories on behalf of nature using the human language, you inevitably anthropomorphize. The human language is so limiting. It's quite interesting. I don't even feel that there is a word that expresses how I feel about my companion dogs. It's kind of not just love. It's kind of I don't have a word for it, and I think we need to either develop a word or admit that we'll never find quite the word, or perhaps that what we feel for animals is actually beyond the realms of language. As a storyteller, and then you say, as a storyteller for system change, I wonder how we can teach people the many languages of nature instead. It's such a beautiful project, Irinya. I don't have the answer to that. It's huge. Maybe we just listen more.
And Belle, we had a question from somebody in our community who wasn't able to join today, but she said that she noticed on your website that there's a film coming out.
Yeah.
And she was curious about the launch date, where she could find that,
Yeah.
any information
So
when
the
she could
film,
see it.
yeah, the film is going to be completed at the beginning of November. It's been really fascinating to work on. Me and the director, we interview 13 advocates, like I said, and it's about moments of moral shock and then how people act on those. There will be a launch, which will be for the speakers, their families, friends, and supporters, and then we'll have a premiere at a film festival. And then after that, I think I'm going to just take it traveling. So it will be available to people if you want to show it, and then have a discussion afterwards. It's really rich in material because, like I said in the previous book, we have a chef, a former livestock farmer, an actor, advocates, strategists, and the gardener, and a model. Yeah, it's a really big group of people coming at it from different perspectives. Thanks,
Great,
Matt.
thank you. It is time, so I just wanted to make sure if everybody needs to jump, you can. If you have another second, Belle, I don't know if you
Sure,
have
I
some
can do
more time
that.
to take Marta's question and maybe another one from Zoe.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you so much. Marta, would you like to go ahead?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think mine is a bit of a big question. So maybe we can just leave it there. But yeah, I was wondering, because I started like studying a bit of ecological economics, and we were talking about ecosystem services and nature contribution to people, and I was quite, I don't know, I had quite like skeptical. I was quite skeptical about these words, and I was wondering, what's your perspective about the relations between human and nature, and how can we you said before, like, put in words, a kind of this kind of relationship.
Yeah, I mean, so in the biodiversity workshops that I deliver, again, I have to work with a certain set of materials, and the certain set of materials have been created by really wonderful people using science from the IPBES. And yeah, that terminology is always there. Ecosystem services, regulating services. And at the beginning when I delivered, I didn't question too much. And as time has gone on, that terminology really grates on me. And so I actually use that as a discussion point now. I say, do we want to call them services because they're there in and of themselves doing their thing? And that service is so anthropocentric. The idea of this service to us, it's usually to us as humans. So yeah, I dispute that. And I would say that so much bias is encapsulated in the languages that we use. And if we could become more conscious of that, and going back to Jane Goodall's idea of understanding, if we can understand how we're boundaried by language, I think we're in a much stronger space to challenge it. Decolonizing language, if you like.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
But Marta, you can bring it out in the open. You can challenge it, in the spaces, that it's used, and go, genuinely, I'm a bit uncomfortable with this idea. Can we, yeah.
Yeah, I think I made it pretty obvious in
Okay.
my classes.
Did you spit on
yeah.
the floor?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Zoe, I think you had another.
Yes, you had one more, Zoe.
Yeah. What about people living in regions where wildlife is rare? How can we reconnect them with nature if they can't experience it directly, and how can they do so without supporting animals? Yes. So weirdly, the next part of my projects, I've got enough to work on now for the rest of my life, so this is great. I'm in conversation with an agency to create a 1.5 hour program, educational workshop for children in urban areas, where is directly inspired by that experience with the kids not knowing who a pig is. And so I was sitting with this, been working on this workshop for a while, thinking, how do I bring the pigs into the space without bringing a pig into the space? Or how do I bring any animal to space where I'm not going to be able to bring an animal in? And the internet is filled with resources with which you can do this. So in one of my talks, all of my material from Animal Aid, the charity, went off the screen. Everything just shut down. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to busk. So I brought up a video of a puppy trying to get down some stairs with the kids. And the puppy is being a delightful puppy. He's like doing one step and then he's going, that's it, I can't do another step. And alongside him, he has a very beautiful human helping him down the step. And I used this video with the kids and I said to the kids, have you ever felt like that puppy, where you just thought, I can't do this? Have you ever wanted to be alongside a human like that human, so kind? Would you not like to be like that human? So basically using materials. I mean, the children just lit up, to be honest. So I'm sorry, but, all respect to Animal Aid, but bringing that material in and talking to them and getting their feedback and, about that animal, that particular animal, was just magic. And so in a way, they connected with the animal despite the animal not being in the room. But the puppy was not there. Now, what happens if I'd found one of the many delightful videos that I've seen about pigs taking care of each other, supporting each other, or in sanctuaries, beautiful sort of friendships between humans and pigs? Could I have then shifted their narrative about what they thought a pig was? And I wouldn't have done. So this is something I'm working on. And again, if anyone wants to come to me for this educational workshop, it will be being rolled out in spring. I'm working with an amazing organization called Gen Earth, who have a lot of experience putting workshops into schools. So they'll be making sure I don't get too maudlin or sentimental. But this is how I think we create empathy. We use what's already out there. There's so much material. And just to tell you one thing as well, that squirrel box video of the little squirrel Emma having her nap early, it had 58,000 likes. This is the kind of audience we want to reach. They're on the cusp of understanding. They want to love and put their love into action. So we're not talking to a small, tiny vegan thing. This is about a very large community of people who love animals but don't quite know what's going on or how they can help. And this is how our groups can come into play.
Awesome. Thank you, Belle. So we have one more question for you.
Sure.
Because you have been so generous with your time and your knowledge with us, and we just really appreciate you being here. And of course, as a community, we always want to give back as well. So what are things that this community can do for you and to support you and your work?
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. So sign up to my newsletter. I try and sort of talk about the latest articles, but also good news about animals, how things are changing. And there are things like highlighted sanctuaries that really need some help, and also petitions we can sign. So it's a sort of little bit of everything. If you can come to the workshop in London, please do. I can create a little resource sheet of all the organisations I've mentioned and send it to you, Michelle, and that will have the link to the workshop in London. The great thing about the workshop in London is a facilitator has been inspired and she wants to roll out this idea of multi-species, visioning multi-species, futures of multi-species flourishing. So there will be more, and hopefully they'll start to travel around the country. When the film comes out, I'm looking for venues. So I would like to show the film, and then I can travel, or I can send someone to travel. We talk about some of the challenges of the film, or how we chose the approach that we did approach. Because the approach is not for animal rights activists. It's really for people who say they love animals but maybe don't know what's going on. So this is a film that should be easy to watch, and then we can I will talk to anyone about the challenges or the topics raised. And then later on, when the workshop is ready for kids, we're looking at late key stage 2. I will be putting a call out to try and get this workshop into schools. And again, we talk empathetically with the kids. We don't name and shame. This is not what we're here for. We're here for building communities of animal lovers who want to do a bit more to support, wildlife, domestic animals, farmed animals, but don't know how. So yeah. So thank you so much for that, actually, Michelle. That's really great. I would have forgotten that.
Yes, great. Thank you. And if you share anything with me, I'll add it to the recording when we place it so that everybody else who wasn't here today can also get the information. Thank you so much, Belle. You've brought such a deep conversation to this community, and I know that that's what everybody here loves, to dive deep with somebody, and on a level like this, it's just been incredible. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's really hard. It's very inspiring. So we just really appreciate you spending the time with us today. For everybody, next Tuesday, we do this every Tuesday. So next Tuesday, we're going to have a little bit of a different one. Nick Allport is going to be here, and he's going to talk about his nature venture that didn't work. So this is not about kind of a debrief, but it's more to share insights for everybody building, so that, you can see with humility and wisdom what a failure means. And of course, there's no failure, right? So he's going to come and share with us. So we hope we see everybody there next week. Belle, Ollie's tradition is always to turn the last word over to our speaker. So if you have anything else you'd like to share, we'd love that. And then we'll say goodbye.
Oh, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for coming today and for being interested in the subject matter. And also I can tell from, I know that you're doing amazing work. The animals we're so lucky to share our planet with them, but they do need us right now. So, do bear them in mind as you go through your days. Thank you so much, though.
Thank you so much, Belle. Bye, everybody.